Okay, this is Fractions, Decimals, and Percents, Chapter 7.2. Okay, here are the key concepts for the day. Go ahead and get these copied into your notes, and when you're ready for the explanation, go ahead and replay me. Okay, our first key concept is fractions, decimals, and percents are all different names that represent the same number. Well, what does that mean? Let's look at this little triangle over here on the right. So up top I've got fractions, down right I've got percent, and on the left I've got decimal. And now look inside the fraction, or inside the triangle. We've got the decimal as being 0.5, the percent being 50%, and the fraction being 1/2. Now don't all three of those numbers mean the exact same thing? Well, that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be interchanging a decimal with a fraction, with a percent, and so on, all the way around this triangle. So knowing that this fraction, this percent, and this decimal are all different ways to say the same number. So we're going to be looking at how to write percents as decimals. How I do that is divide by 100 and remove the percent symbol. Okay? Divide by 100 and remove the percent symbol. And I have this little thing, move decimal left. This will be my shortcut to teach you, but always, if you don't remember the shortcut, divide by 100 and remove the percent symbol. Second is to write a decimal as a percent. We are going to multiply by 100 and add the percent symbol. Because I'm writing it as a percent, we have to have a percent symbol. And then my little shortcut here is move the decimal right. And finally, the third one, we've got writing a fraction as a percent. In order to write a fraction as a percent, we have to do two things. We're going to first of all change the fraction to a decimal. Then once you have it in a decimal, we're going to go back up to number 2 here and writing the decimal as a percent. So we're going to multiply by 100 and add the percent symbol. And then here's just a little FYI here. When the numerator of a fraction is less than the denominator, the fraction is going to be less than 100%. When the numerator is greater than the denominator, the fraction is going to be greater than 100%. And here are some common equivalents. All of these are just ones that you will see most commonly, so it's a good idea if you look at these and can recognize these common equivalents. Okay, here's our first example. We are going to write percents as decimals. So I'm going to write 16% as a decimal. So if you go back to your chart from our key concepts, we're going to take 16% and divide by 100. And when we do that, we're going to get 0.16. Now, when we write it as a decimal, remember that we lose our percent sign. So do not write it with a percent sign, and just write it as your final answer as 0.16. Okay, you do this one. Okay, so to write a percent as a decimal, we're going to do 2 over 100. And when we write that out, that is 0.02. Okay, and this one we have 0.7 over 100. We're going to divide 0.7 by 100, and when we do that, we get 0.007. Lose the percent sign. Alright, and you do this one, and replay me when you're ready for the answer. So again, we have 126 over 100. When we write that out, we get 1.26. Lose your percent sign. Alright, now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing decimals as percents. So we are going to write this decimal as a percent. So remember from the first key concept slide, to write decimals as percents, you are going to multiply by 100 and add a percent sign. Remember, whenever it asks you to write it as a percent, it has to have that percent sign on the end. So I'm going to take 0.2 times 100, and when I do that, I get 20. And I'm going to add that percent sign there on the end. So my answer is 20%. Okay. Okay, here's another you do. Go ahead and try this one on your own and replay me when you're ready for the answer. Write each decimal as a percent. So we get 0.01 times 100. When I do that, I get to be 1. And then I add my percent sign as 1%. Okay, here I'll do this one. This is writing a decimal as a percent. When I write a decimal as a percent, I'm going to multiply by 100. And when I do that, I get 384, add a percent sign, 384%. And you do this one and try it as best you can. Replay me when you're ready for the answer. So we're writing a decimal as a percent, so we do 0.002 times 100. And when I multiply that by 100, I get 0.2. Add your percent as 0.2%. All right, now we're going to be looking at writing fractions as percents. Okay, in order to write a fraction as a percent, we have to, first of all, do two things. First thing is we have to write it as a decimal. Then, after we write it as a decimal, then we change it into a percent. So 5/8 as a decimal, we're going to divide 8 into 5, add a decimal, add a 0, bring that decimal symbol up. 8 goes into 56 times. 8 times 6 is 48. 2, bring down the 0. That goes in twice. 16 with 4 left over. Bring down the 0. 8 into 40 is 5. So our decimal, 5/8 as a decimal is 0.625. Okay, that's not what it's asking. We're not asking fraction as a decimal. We're asking fraction as a percent. Okay, so in order to write it as a percent, I need to first of all multiply it by 100, and that is 62.5. And then you add your decimal, add your percent sign, excuse me. So multiply by 100 and add your percent sign to get your percent. So 5/8 is 62.5%. All right, you do this one. Okay, so we are going to divide 40 into 27. And 40 into 27, when we do that, you get 630, and then 40 into 300 is 728, subtract 2, so that's 200, and 40 into 200 is 5, 200. So now I have my decimal is 0.675, but it didn't ask me to write it as a decimal. It asked me to write it as a percent. So I need to change this to a percent. So I'm going to multiply by 100, and I get 67.5. Add your percent sign, 67.5%. Alright, now we've got 27 over 13. Remember, if my numerator is greater than my denominator, what is my percent going to be? Over 100%, right? So if you get a number that's over 100%, then you know you're in the clear. So we're going to divide 27 into 13, and I'm not going to do it because I've already done it once, but when you do that, you get 2.0769. Just for time's sake, I won't do the whole thing out. And when I multiply this by 100, I'm going to get 207, and it asks you to round to the nearest tenth. So this is 207.69, and I'm going to round that to 7. Add my percent sign. 207.7%. Alright, here is a you do. Go ahead and try this one as best you can and replay me when you're ready for the answer. Okay, so we're dividing 17 by 11, and so when we do that, you get 1.5454545454. And when we write that as a percent, we're going to multiply by 100. And this is 154.5, round to the nearest tenth, percent. Alright, and here's an I do. You're going to divide 3 into 400. And so we'll do 400 divided by 3. Okay, can 400 go into 30? No, so we're going to go one more. 400 into 300? No, so we have to go one more. 400 into 3,000 will be about 7, and that's 2,800. Subtract, we get 200. 400 into 2,000 is 5. So 3 over 400 is 0.0075. Now, it does not ask us to write a fraction as a decimal. It asks us to write it as a percent. So I'm going to multiply by 100, and I'm getting 0.75. Add your percent sign as 0.75%. Alright, you do this one and do the best you can. Replay me when you're ready for the answer. Alright, so 1 into 250, when you do your division, it is 0.004. And when you multiply by 100, to change that into a decimal, into a percent, excuse me, that's going to be 0. Whoops, too many zeros. 0.4. Add your percent sign, 0.4%. Here's another type of question. In an online survey, 1/5 of teenagers said that their favorite way of communicating with friends is by email. 21% preferred using their cell phones, and 0.15 favored instant messaging. Which of these groups is the largest? And then I made a little note over here that we can compare fractions, decimals, and percents by writing them in the same format. So let's see, we've got 1/5 using email, and then we have 21% using their phones, and 0.15 liked I am. Okay, so I have 1/5 compared to 21% compared to 0.15. So I've got a fraction, I've got a percent, and I've got a decimal. Right now, at this moment, I can't really tell which one is the greatest because they're not in the same format. So in order to compare them, I'm going to either get them all in fraction, all in percent, or all in decimal. So let's change them to, we could do percent. So 1/5 as a decimal, let me change colors here, as a decimal will be 0.20. And as a percent, remember we have to multiply by 100 and add a percent sign, and this becomes 20%. 21% is already in a percent, so we're going to keep that as 21%. And IM is in a decimal, so we're going to multiply that by 100, and that is going to be 15%. Okay, so now that I'm all in the same format, percent, 20%, 21%, and 15%, we can look at this pretty easily and compare and see which one is the greatest preference of all these teenagers. Well, we can see that the phones, the cell phones, has 21%, which is the greatest, and the kids prefer using the cell phones over other means of communication. All right, you try this one. All right, at a restaurant, 1/8 of customers prefer fish sandwiches, 14% prefer rib sandwiches, and 0.12 prefer chicken sandwiches. Which of these groups is the largest? So first of all, we've got fish, which is 1/8 of the people. We've got rib, sandwiches at 14%, and chicken at 0.12%. So we could either do as a decimal, as a fraction, or as a percent. Usually fractions are probably not going to be the most efficient way to do this, because if you compare them in fractions, you'll need to get a common denominator. So what I would recommend is I would either do percents or decimals. So 0.18 as a decimal, you should have found to be 0.125. Rib sandwiches, 14% as a decimal would be 0.14. And chicken, of course, is already in decimal as 0.12. So I could compare it in decimal format, 0.125, 0.14, and 0.12. As you can see, your rib sandwiches is the most popular. If you didn't do it in decimal, you could also do this in percent, and you would multiply each of those by 100 and add your percent sign. So this would be 12.5%, 14%, that was already in percent, or 12%. And we could look here, and we could also see that in percent that your rib sandwich are your most popular choice for these customers. And here are your extra practice problems. Go ahead and try your best with these, and we'll go over them the next time we see each other.